Today's gospel lesson comes from Matthew chapter 13. These are a series of parables that Jesus told his disciples. Jesus said, "The kingdom of heaven is like a mustard seed that someone took and sowed in his field. It is the smallest of all seeds, but when it has grown, it is the greatest of all shrubs, and becomes a tree, so that the birds of the air come and make nests in its branches." Jesus told them another parable. "The kingdom of heaven is like yeast that a woman took and mixed in with 3 measures of flour until all of it was leavened. The kingdom of heaven is like treasure hidden in a field, which someone found and hid. Then in his joy, the man sells all he has and buys that field. Again, the kingdom of heaven is like a merchant in search of fine pearls. On finding one pearl of great value, he went and sold all that he had and bought it." This is the word of the Lord.
Thanks be to God.
So I is for imagination. Imagination, that faculty is it conjures up new patterns, new possibilities, new stories, so that we start to see everyday life differently. It becomes more interesting, more intriguing, more surprising. We look for patterns all the time. It's part of our imaginative gift that God gives us. I remember a few weeks ago down by the bay, Danielle and I, we walk out on Kilch's Point, and we go out toward the bay, and sometimes we sit or stand by this big log that's right near the edge. And so we were standing there for a while looking at the birds out on the water, and then I looked to my right and I saw coming out of a knot a dragon's head. Obviously someone else had seen this pattern before, because it seems like they did a little bit of carving to carve out the nostrils a little bit more, and the eyes and the ears, and even somehow colored them in a little bit. So here was this dragon staring at us. I don't know how long it had been there. So imagination does that. It looks for patterns to discover and to play with. You know, when you're outside and you're looking at the beautiful cloudy sky and these big billowy clouds, you see patterns in them, you see certain creatures, various kinds of animals, and if you're with a friend, you start saying, well, I see, a bird over there, well, there's a rabbit, and no, I don't see that as a rabbit, I see that as a hippopotamus. So people begin to use their imagination to figure out these patterns. We look up in the sky for these things, but we also look on the ground for interesting signs and artifacts that we might be able to make something out. Now, one of the things that Danielle likes to do when we're down by the bay is that she looks for heart-shaped rocks. So she'll spend half her time looking at the beautiful scenery and the other half of her time looking down at the rocks, at the bay. And usually she'll find a handful of heart-shaped rocks. Now some of these, seems to be a bit of a stretch. Some of them look like really, cool heart-shaped rocks. Others become maybe increasingly abstract or, suggesting a rock perhaps. But when you have them with the other rocks, it kind of shows why that particular rock was selected. So anyway, before we leave, Daniel likes to kind of stage these rocks in a place where someone is going to see them when they come down the trail, and then they can have their imaginative encounter with these heart-shaped rocks. Maybe it will mean something to them. Maybe it will be a signal of God's love, or just a kind of encouragement of playfulness and imagination.